You're watching Exit 1055 with your host, Richard Rose.
And good morning, I'm Richard Rose. Welcome to Exit 1055 Long Island. This is your TV 1055 show about all things Long Island. This morning, we will enjoy the classically trained, melodiously perfect, and world-renowned Glen Cove Chorale. As you'll hear, these youngsters are very musically talented, and they will help us celebrate the holidays together. But we begin this morning with flu season in full swing now. The flu shot is the antidote, say the experts, but this year's batch is proving not quite as effective as in past years. TV 1055's Alice Gaynor explains.
The flu virus is now widespread in 4 states. The Centers for Disease Control says confirmed flu cases are at just over 7,000, more than double what they were at this time last year. This year's flu shot is the same one used in Australia's recent flu season when it was only 10% effective.
Lots of different strains, and it's changing all the time. And so by the time we pick a version of the virus to make into a vaccine and put it into production, it might take 6 to 8 months. And in that time, the virus might change.
According to the CDC, on average, a flu vaccine is 37% effective. Last year's vaccine was 42% effective.
Even 10% effective is better than anything.
The New York City Department of Health says right now the level of flu activity in the area is low, but increasing. Dr. Len Horowitz, a pulmonologist at Lenox Hill Hospital, echoes that.
So far, there aren't that many cases here in the New York area of influenza, but there will be.
And he says just because this vaccine might be less effective doesn't mean you shouldn't get it.
But even if you have a case of the flu and you've been vaccinated, it will be less severe and there will be less duration of symptoms.
He also adds it's not too late to get the shot, and make sure you're washing your hands.
And joining us now to explain a little bit more about flu season is Dr. Sophia Jan. She is the Division Chief of General Pediatrics at Cohen Children's Medical Center, part of the Northwell Health Medical System. Welcome to our show, Doctor.
Thank you.
So what are you seeing in terms of flu cases in your hospitals?
Well, certainly at Cohen Children's Medical Center, there are many more children who are coming in with respiratory infections. And in fact, one of our staff was just commenting this morning how an entire floor in the hospital is now full of kids with flu-like illness. And so we are seeing many more cases at this time of year, where normally we'd be thinking that this would be happening a little bit later in the year.
And this has to be taken seriously. How deadly is the flu, and who's most prone?
Well, children, particularly those who are under the age of 5, and especially when they're under 2, are particularly prone to death as well as just complications of the flu. And then on the other end of the extreme, the elderly, particularly those who are above 65, are particularly vulnerable.
I was shocked to see that the numbers, thousands of people die every year from the flu.
Right. In fact, just this year alone, 8 children have already died from flu.
In our area, you mean, or just for the season across the U.S.?
US, yeah.
Still, that's shocking because nobody expects a child to die from something like that.
That's right. And particularly, like, for children and for adults, like if you have some kind of chronic illness such as asthma, heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, and these are chronic conditions that are pretty widespread, you're at much higher risk of complications.
Everybody's talking about how it's only 10% effective, saying, oh, it's almost useless. But we have to qualify that statistic, right?
Yeah, so some of those estimates are coming from sort of what we saw in the Southern Hemisphere in Australia. So their flu season runs basically from April until September. And oftentimes what we see down in Australia starts to mirror similar to what we may see up here in the Northern Hemisphere.
What we may see, because it could be different.
That's the point, that even though it was only about 10% effective, it could potentially be much more effective here. I mean, it is true that some of the early strains of flu that we're seeing, particularly one that's a little bit more predominant, is one that did mutate when the flu vaccine was in production. So it is not as effective. But the flu vaccine really helps, like, ameliorate a lot of the symptoms that that kids and adults can get, and furthermore, like, protects all the ones around you that may also be at risk for flu.
So in other words, if you get the flu shot and you still get the flu, the symptoms might be less?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so that's why they say even though it's 10 to 40%, whatever the figure may be, it's still better than nothing.
That's right. You may not need to be out of work as often or as long, or you may not be out of school as long, or most important, that you may not experience some of the complications that may land you in the hospital or even worse.
You know, you're going to have some folks that are going to be listening that don't believe in the flu, and you see it everywhere. I mean, I was listening to a talk show just yesterday where some caller came in and says it's a big scam for pharmaceutical companies to make billions of dollars. And why should I bother with something that's only 10% effective? Some people think that the flu actually give you the flu, you know, because they use a dead part of the virus. What do you say to folks who are convinced, they're passionate about it, that this can cause illness?
Yeah, well, the way we make flu vaccine is that you exactly said it right. We kill the virus. They're called inactivated influenza virus, and we kill it either using radiation or, you know, we cook it in high temperature. So they're basically dead viruses.
So it's dead. Is there any way that it somehow organically could come back to life?
No, there's no way. Yeah, absolutely not.
You know, somebody got the flu after having the flu shot, and they said, well, I'm going to go get another flu shot. But that's ridiculous, right? That doesn't work?
So, you know, the flu shot is pretty effective for the season. And if you've gotten the flu, that probably means you may have gotten a strain of flu virus that either was not, that the vaccine didn't cover, or it meant that you actually were somewhat protected, but you didn't get the full-fledged flu. So at this point, you're probably pretty well protected.
So are we losing the battle against the flu? Because every year it seems to evolve and change, and then they have to come up with a new batch?
So it is true that we do need better technologies to respond faster to the flu virus. But I would not say that we're losing the battle by any means. There's plenty of studies, and I certainly see it every day in both my pediatric and adult medicine practices, that flu vaccine works.
One of the things that I think people get confused about is how do you know the difference whether you have the cold or the flu? Because we know that one of the worst parts of it is that it gets spread by people going to work or school or going out in the public. They think they just have the cold. How do you know the difference?
Sometimes it's hard to tell. Generally, flu symptoms are much more severe, though. They come on.
What are the symptoms?
So so basically, you would generally have fever, chills, muscle aches, and you just feel terrible. And it comes on pretty suddenly, much more, and as well as you have your cold symptoms, but it's much more severe.
Yeah, because you don't get those kind of symptoms with the cold.
That's right.
So that should be a clue if you're getting, especially if you're getting chills and you're shaking.
Especially if you get chills. Yeah,
and then, of course, the good
aches.
Hygiene. Give us the tips again. It seems common sense, but people need to be reminded, right?
Yeah, so basic things like wash your hands.
Right.
Wash your hands. Wash your hands.
Mom was right.
Mom was right. And then when you have the urge to cough, always cover your mouth, cover your face. And so it's basic sort of hygiene like that. And the other thing is when you are ill and you have a fever and you are just feeling terrible, don't go to work.
You're right. It seems hard to do, especially the pressures people are under. But these are the tips. Dr. Sophia Zhan, Chief of Pediatrics at Cohen Children's Medical Center. Thanks for all the helpful advice. And hopefully we won't have to get the flu or come see you at the hospital. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And when we return, that's still ahead, we'll talk with the Glen Cove Chorale Director and hear more beautiful composings of their choice. Stay with us.